everybody, it's Randy with Carchaeology, and I am going to be digging deep into my own past with this latest arrival at the lab. This is a 1998 Volkswagen New Beetle. Now, not everybody that's a follower here really knows my history with these cars, but it's kind of a deep one. In fact, I don't think there's a car that I've been more obsessed with in my life than the Volkswagen New Beetle. I also think it's one of the cars that has truly changed my life the most. And I'll give you the quick story of that, and then I'm going to follow up with further videos down the road about it. But the quick story is that I was a hardcore VW guy back in the 80s and early 90s, and I would not step foot in a Volkswagen dealership. There was nothing that VW made that really made any sense to me. I hated all the water-cooled stuff. It was just not my jam. I was all air-cooled until the New Beetle started bubbling up to the surface. So in 1994, when they released the Concept 1 concept car out at the auto shows and stuff, I thought, man, that thing's pretty cool looking. They somehow captured the original spirit of the Volkswagen Beetle in a modern form, and it was beautifully, beautifully done. And I watched that as time went on, and when they said they were going to actually produce the car, my interest kind of peaked. Now, I was trying to stay away from it a little bit. I admit it just was kind of a on the fence sort of a thing. I knew what was going on. I followed the whole story of them building it. And then when the LA Auto Show came around, I went down to the show. I took a good close look at those cars, and I said to myself right there, okay, I've got to get on a list for one of these cars. Now, at the time, there were big, long lists for the release of the New Beetle. And I dragged my feet, and I didn't get on any sort of list. I called a couple of dealerships. They said, oh, you're probably 6 months or a year out. All of that just kind of turned me off. But I was paying close enough attention that I knew what day the first cars were being delivered to Southern California dealerships. And I called Corona Volkswagen, which was one of the closest VW dealers to where I lived, and was blown away that they said, oh, well, if you want a blue one, you can have it today. And I thought it must have been a mistake, but I wasn't going to take a chance. And I guarantee you, whoever it was on the other end of the phone probably heard Tyler squealing out of the driveway before the receiver hit the floor. And my wife and I blasted out to Corona Volkswagen, and sure enough, there was a blue 1998 New Beetle there. And they did say it was available, and we pulled the trigger and bought that car. So we drove away from the dealership that evening, and were kind of blown away. It was like everybody I had talked to, everything that was out there on the news was that you weren't going to be able to get one of these cars unless you were on a waiting list. But somehow we managed to drive one home. The very next day, we ended up going for a drive in our new car down to the beach of Orange County and drove around. And as we were coming up the freeway, we noticed in San Juan Capistrano at the Volkswagen dealership there, they were having a big party. There were huge crowds of people, balloons, and all sorts of stuff. And I thought, well, you know, let's go check that out. And so we pulled up there. We realized there was no parking, but we also realized what was going on was they were having a party for the release of the Volkswagen New Beetle. And the Beetle that they had shipped to the dealership was all roped off, and big crowds of people around it trying to get a closer look. So I thought, you know what? Nobody's going to turn us away if we try to part the crowd. And sure enough, we did. We pulled right up into the dealership, much to the surprise of everybody that was there, including some representatives from Volkswagen that were wondering how the hell we got a car. And when I explained to them that we bought it at Volkswagen of Corona, the one guy was visibly upset. And he said straight up, they weren't supposed to sell that car. Every dealer got one car to display for the first weekend for the main release of the New Beetle to the public, and they were supposed to hold on to it for the weekend so that anybody that was interested could come by a dealership and see what the Beetle was all about. Well, these guys in Corona, I guess, didn't get that memo, and they let the car go to us. So that started this whole chain of events that was absolutely insane. We were one of the first people to drive around Southern California in a New Beetle, and I've told people again and again, I don't think there was a car on the road that would ever garner as much attention as that car did. in March of 1998. I told people you could drive around in the Wienermobile with flames shooting out the roof and people wouldn't freak out as much as they did about the Beetle. The other thing that was kind of fun about that was since I had some connections in the VW scene through the air-cooled stuff, I was contacted by a few folks that wanted to make accessories for the Volkswagen Beetle, and they wanted a car to try it on. And I was the only guy that had one at that point. So I ended up bouncing around to a few different manufacturers in Southern California, and before I knew it, my new Beetle was completely tricked out. And then I had other new Beetle owners coming to me going, hey, where did you get that part? Well, being an enterprising young man at the time, I said, well, I can help you get that stuff. And through that, I founded a store called TVA New Beetle Accessories. And that turned out to be a phenomenal business for us. We started out at home with it, and then we moved into a shop in Brea, California. And very quickly, we rode the wave to the top of the accessory providers for the Volkswagen Beetle. At the time, I also founded the New Beetle Club, which turned out to be a worldwide thing that's still going on today. The NBC, as I called it, with a little logo with arched little beetle shapes, I'll have to dig that up to share with you, ended up being a great way to reach clients, to promote the business, and to really have a good time cruising around with other Beetle people. And cruise around we did. We had events and stuff all over the country, the biggest being in Roswell, New Mexico, where somebody suggested was the place we could go with our Beetles that were reverse engineered from UFOs, and we could be abducted and that sort of thing. That turned out to be a great event that continued on for years. In fact, I think it's still going on today. One year at Roswell, Volkswagen even got involved, and they did a great thing where they brought a helicopter out, a new Beetle, and they made it look like somebody was truly being abducted out in the desert of New Mexico. And it was totally, totally awesome. And I had an inside view to all of that. In fact, I even rode to Roswell on the helicopter that they used for that thing. In any case, during that period, I collected every possible thing I could that was related to the new Beetle, be it press items, be it parts, be it toys, accessories, whatever. I hoarded that stuff like crazy, and anything that I could get in quantity, I sold through my shop. Well, flash forward years later now, here we are more than 25 years later, and 1998 is a part of my history. There's some other cool parts of the story I'll get into, the cross-country road trip, the magazine and TV articles and all of that stuff. I mean, this really, really, truly changed my life and brought me right into the spotlight of doing something cool with cars. And that really kickstarted my whole life of dealing with cars. Anyway, 25 years later, I'm starting to remember all of that stuff. And for quite a while, I've been on the lookout for a 1998 Beetle to bring back into the collection to relive those memories. And this one just arrived here tonight, or last night. But it's not the one that I had in the past, but it is a very special one. And I'm going to take you for a quick walk around to tell you why this particular new Beetle is not your normal silver bug. So I've been hunting for a 1998 Beetle to play with for quite some time. I've gone and looked at quite a few. Most of them have been really horribly used and abused. These cars got a lot of miles on them. They got beat up quite a bit, and quite frankly, the quality of them wasn't all that phenomenal. So finding one in really cherry shape has turned out to be a difficult thing. Now, this one isn't perfect. Obviously, you can see some damage on the front end here. The paint's a little faded and so on and so forth. But overall, it's a really nice, solid, original paint, unmolested 1998 New Beetle. What makes it even more special, though, is that it is an extremely early production model. In fact, I think this just might be the lowest VIN number car to be sold to the public. Now, when I bought my new Beetle, it was on March 13th, 1998. I will never forget it. I don't know what day this car was sold, but I hope to find out because I've reached out to the original owner of it and I'm awaiting some response there. But if you look at the VIN number here, it is number 746. That's the 746th Beetle to leave the assembly line. Now, a little backstory on that is that when these cars were coming out and hitting the auto shows and test cars were floating around and that sort of thing, I really think VIN numbers of those cars were quite early. In fact, there's one in particular that I recall seeing. This was a car that had been used for design study and testing, and its VIN number was in the 500 range. And it was a car that was supposed to be crushed. It was a test car. It wasn't something that was supposed to be sold to the public. And I remember seeing that. Back when these cars were coming out, I had a good friend that was hunting for the lowest VIN number car he could find. And he searched across the country, talking to dealerships and trying to find the lowest VIN number car. He ended up finding one that was, well, it was a little bit after this one. It was about 48 cars after this particular Beetle. So looking around, I have not yet found another new Beetle in circulation out there, something that was road registered and run that has a lower VIN number than this particular car. Now, why aim for something like that? Well, I don't know. I mean, I think this was a historic, very special car when it came down to Volkswagen's history. I think that it made a massive impact in Volkswagen's presence here in the US, and it was something that I was involved with back from day one when it came to that. So I think as time goes on, this is going to be a highly collectible car. As I've posted up a couple of photos of this up on social media, everybody's popping up with their memories of the new Beetle. It was a blast. It was such a good time, and it was so well received. I do think that as time goes on, people are going to be really holding on to these cars. So there's a few things with the early production cars that differ from the later years. So 1998, of course, being the first year, there's a few differences that you'll see on those cars. Probably the most obvious one is the lack of side marker lights. Because in 1999, when they released the car, they put a little clear marker light right there on the quarter panel. And then as time went on, they changed the size of the mirrors and that sort of thing. Looking at the mirrors, the passenger side mirror is actually significantly smaller than the driver's side mirror. And that was something that they changed in subsequent models a couple years later. There's some interior differences too that were only on the 98 models. And especially the early 98 models, one of those being these little round speakers in that front post. In later 98 production, they went to a triangle-shaped speaker grill, something that took up a little bit more space. Other details, the clock up here on the ceiling. This was a 98 only item. In later production, they actually put a storage unit thing up here for your sunglasses and things like that. Other things that popped up on the early cars, gosh, you know, there's quite a few, and I'm going to have to dig those up to share with you. I know that the earliest model cars, the body color finish on the top of the door panels were done in a matte finish. In later production years, they went to a glossy finish. And there's some other little details too. But look for that marker light. Look for that early speaker right there, the round speaker, and those are signs of an early production 98 Beetle. Now, obviously, if you look at the production tag here, you can see when this thing was built. So this was October of 97. This car actually rolled off the assembly line. The cars weren't released to the public until March of 1998, so do the math there. In any case, this thing's super early, and as you can see, it's actually in pretty good shape. It's got roughly 90,000 miles on it, I believe. It is an automatic transmission car. It's got the black cloth interior, which fortunately has aged very well. The light color cloth interiors, the gray and the beige, those things really fell apart. Other things that fell apart on these things were the finish on the dash. There's like a rubberized coating on that dash, and that stuff scratched super easy. This one's actually in phenomenal shape. I'm really excited about that. There is some wear on the inner door handles here. You can see where that sort of rubberized coating is coming off a little bit. That is something that was a weak spot. And over time, these door handles broke from people opening and closing the doors. That was certainly a thing. I'm going to pop the hood here and show you another early 98 thing, or at least a 98 model only item. And that is the hood support system. So to pop the hood, you pull the latch, pull that little tongue out of there, and then you can lift this up. Now on the 98 cars, on the first production ones, there was a hood prop that held the hood up. And later on, they actually put some little gas struts to hold the hood up. So that's another early thing. Anyway, 2-liter gas motor, good basic engine. The automatic transmission cars, which this one is, are known to have some issues. This one does have some issues, which I'm going to have to sort out. Other little details on this particular car is it is a deluxe model. I forget exactly what they called it. Maybe it was the GL model or something like that had the alloy wheels on it. Some of them were delivered with steel wheels and a plastic hubcap. This one got that. There were also some other differences in the little rear emblem here. The early cars, this swivels up out of the way to reveal a latch to open that up. Some later cars, that was gone, and it was just an emblem there, and you'd have to release it with a remote. And as I go through this, I'm sure I'll find some more details that are specific to the first generation of the New Beetle. But here you go. Here's a walk around of this particular one. So what's the plan with this car? I think the plan is to fix the mechanical issues with it. I'm going to fix this body damage here, blend that in. I'm going to try to polish up this original paint the best that I can. And I'm going to go through the absolutely massive stash I have of New Beetle memorabilia and parts and accessories that were left over from the TVA business back in the day. And I'm not necessarily going to hoard this thing up with a lot of period accessories. I might bring out a couple of cool things, but I really want to preserve this as an all-stock, super early example, which it is. And then I plan on setting up a spot in the lab there where I can display the car as well as the memorabilia and all of that history. And I can walk in there and smile and remember my times of driving the New Beetle in 1998. So I urge you to follow along on this particular adventure. I think it's going to be a real fun one. It's a super heartfelt one for me. And I look forward to getting this thing out on the road. And more than anything, I look forward to digging through the archives of all the New Beetle history that I've got, because it was an incredible time in the history of Volkswagen, and it's one that I think as time goes on, people really enjoy looking back and seeing the involvement of what was going on there. I mean, I've already started digging through some of the books, some of the papers, some of the photos, and man, there's just so much to share. But here's the introduction. Here is the super early model 1998 Volkswagen Beetle that has entered the lab. Certainly history on wheels, and an important part of my personal history that I look forward to sharing with you. So please subscribe, follow, like, comment, so on and so forth. If you know of a Volkswagen Beetle that's got a lower VIN number than this one, I'd certainly love to know it. Send me photos through Carchaeology.com, mention it in the comments, whatever. Let's share some excitement and some stories of the Volkswagen New Beetle and celebrate the fact that these things are now 25 friggin' years old. How the hell did that happen? Man, life moves pretty fast. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Keep on digging them up and driving them. Bye-bye.